Our next presenter is Mrs. Allague and Professor Abdul with a topic on integrating critical thinking in EFL classes and the promotion of sustainable development, the case of the civilization course. You may proceed.
So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil mursalin. So today I want to tell you that I feel extremely privileged to be given this opportunity to come here and discuss a very insightful and interesting topic, which is the integration of critical thinking in EFL classes and the promotion of sustainable development, at the same time, the case of civilization course. The outline is going to be organized by, at first, I'm going to define what critical thinking is, Bloom's taxonomy, critical thinking skills and strategies in EFL classes, advantages of critical thinking skills, EFL classes and sustainable development, critical thinking and sustainable development, henceforth CT and SD. The case of civilization course, methods and techniques to instill critical thinking skills along with sustainability and general conclusion. At first, I want to tell you that I have never taught before, and my perception of critical thinking has always been a mindful process, which means critical thinking is like critical thinking is people who have the ability to think outside the box. I've always thought that critical thinkers read between the lines. Critical thinkers often foresee the future because they learn from past mistakes in history. So this is the perception that I had of critical thinking. As I delved into some well-thoughtful definitions by scholars, philosophers, and education reformers, despite they have divergent vocabulary to determine what critical thinking is, but the core of it, they all come under the same umbrella. First of all, John Dewey, he is a widely acknowledged author, and he wrote a very insightful book that was entitled How We Think. He defines critical thinking as an active, persistent, and careful consideration of any belief or supposed form of knowledge in the light of the grounds that support it and the further conclusions to which it tends, constitutes reflective thought. So, many scholars now in the realm of academia refer to critical thinking as reflective thinking, thus the two terms are used interchangeably. Another prominent figure in the realm of education is William T. Gormley. He is a philosopher at the University of Harvard and elaborates on Dewey's perspective by stating that critical thinking or reflective thinking, as I told you, are both used interchangeably, is an intense mental activity, not a casual one. It requires alertness, patience, and commitment to accuracy and precision. In other words, it is based on facts, on analysis, and on a valid evaluation. He also goes further by stating that critical thinking is an open-minded inquiry that seeks out relevant evidence to analyze a question or proposition, or let's say, premises and hypotheses. Kevin Orley, which is also a very prominent figure in the realm of education in the United States, postulates critical thinking to be judging the worth of claims or arguments. It involves judgment, assessment, and evaluation. The critical thinking has a healthy skepticism and asks probing questions, which means contemplating about very vexing problems and questions. The non-critical thinker is likely to jump into conclusions and believe whatever it is claimed, and this is why we distinguish between a problem solver and critical thinking, because the problem solver seeks only to find a solution to a simple problem, whereas the critical thinking delves into the true meaning to reach a valid and a conclusion that is based on facts. And we cannot tackle critical thinking without mentioning Bloom's taxonomy. At first, Benjamin Bloom is a widely acknowledged figure in the realm of education. He has introduced the word to the revolutionary idea about the taxonomy of educational objectives in 1956. 1956, which classified the various learning objectives and skills that are vital to educators to boost students' thinking process. It was a stratification of the different thinking abilities that educators ought to target to enhance those kind of skills, shaping as a result the mindsets of their students. In 2001, and due to the requirements of the 21st century, due to the interconnectedness, due to the massive use of internet, social media, where the entire world has become borderless and the massive movement of people are goods. Anderson and Caldwell, both of them were very rigorous students of Benjamin Bloom's himself. In 2001, they collaborated and they both orchestrated a new version of the classic Bloom's taxonomy. And they introduced in 2001. And I brought here a diagram to illustrate the main differences between the classic taxonomy that was introduced by Bloom in 1956 and Bloom's new taxonomy introduced by those scholars with the requirements of the 21st century. We see that we change from a noun to verb. Knowledge has become remembering, comprehension, understanding, apply, analyze, and the main difference is the change that happened between the two top mental skills, that evaluating, then creating, instead of synthesizing, that is based on the combination of different prerequisite knowledge to form new premises and new hypotheses. So they switch the two top mental skills. And Bloom's taxonomy, in remembering, it heavily relies on as the name indicates, it is based on rote memorization. Here the student is required to memorize, since we are taught in history classes, to memorize dates. If you ask them about the date on which the American Revolution or the Civil Rights Movement has taken place, so he gives you date. If you ask me the prominent figure in the Civil Rights Movement, he's going to say, for instance, Malcolm X or Martin Luther King. It is a rote memorization of historical facts and dates. Understanding is different. It requires a better thinking skills. In understanding, the student constructs meaning from his accumulated knowledge, such as interpreting, exemplifying, summarizing, inferring, and explaining, which means if he gets an idea about a certain historical topic, he's going to start restating it and make you understand it better using his own or her own words. In applying it's carrying out or using a procedure through executing or implementing, applying refers to situation where learned material is used. In this level, students are maybe asked to choose, demonstrate, employ, write, interpret, etc., which means they use the background knowledge that the teacher instructed inside the classroom atmosphere and use them in real life problems and to solve to reach further conclusions. In analyzing, this level of thinking requires significant ability to think critically. Mental actions employed are differentiating, organizing, attributing. To examine this level of thinking, students are asked to compare, concentrate, distinguish, and examine. In evaluating requires a remarkable ability of critical thinking, because the student is supposed to make judgment. In the newer taxonomy, Anderson and Caldwell point out that evaluating comes before creating, and it is often a necessary part of the precursory behavior before one creates something. Finally, creating, which is where the most of critical thinking is employed to come up with something original and unusual. This process is the most difficult mental function in this taxonomy, and the bright side is creativity actually can be instructed. Because of creativity, we have Da Vinci, who drew the Mona Lisa. We have Beethoven's symphonies. We have Facebook. We have Instagram. All of those people have extreme ability to think creatively and to bring novelty in realms that people have never thought it was possible. But here, in EFL classes and civilization and with the rational instruction of critical thinking, actually creativity can be taught and can be definitely learned. Critical thinking skills in EFL classes. Critical thinking skills. In EFL classes, students are eager to learn a new language, which is the English language. And the skills that we have to target are, for instance, process information, make decisions, produce their own arguments, solve problems, and in some way they have to master to be autonomous, which means to master metacognition. And metacognition here means the indulgement in thinking about your own thinking, which means to be aware of how your thinking process works, which means you have the ability to monitor your thinking in the current circumstances that you have to indulge your thinking process to find valid conclusion and to come to the decision, conclusions, final judgment, etc. So metacognition here is vital for every single person, student to acquire, or for every single educator to target as one of the main skills in EFL classes. Critical thinking strategies. We cannot reach those skills without educators follow certain set of strategies. So before targeting those skills, educators have to be aware of the strategies suitable to espouse inside the classroom atmosphere to enhance those skills. There have many suggestions by different scholars, different strategies, but the ones that I found extremely linked to EFL classes are these 4 strategies introduced by Ronnie Potts. He first highlighted the interaction among students as a pivotal strategy to boosting their motivation, and healthy classroom discussion among students when they have this sense of benevolent competition. It can highly boost their motivation, and asking open-ended question on the other hand, which means questions that do not have a clear-cut answer. For me, it's a very vital strategy, because here the students are going to participate without being anxious or fearful that they may produce a wrongful answer. So you discharge them from the burden of giving a wrong answer, which means all answers are accepted, and this question does not have one truth or one valid answer. Given sufficient time, and this is one of the most vexing barriers in EFL teaching, especially in the case of civilization course, because a lot of students complain about the time restraint. So they do not feel that they have the opportunity and the time at the same time to ponder about a certain question to reach a valid answer or conclusion. And educators should expose EFL students to a variety of situations where they can employ the newly acquired set of information and skills. For instance, if you are teaching them how to write argumentative essay or how to write a paragraph, then the educator should ask students, for instance, to write paragraphs using those transitions, to write coherent and cohesion paragraphs, which means the application of the theoretical part they have been instructed inside the classroom, and actually solve real problems, write their own paragraphs using their own words, etc. Advantages of critical thinking skills. To be honest, there are myriad advantages of critical thinking skills, because when you are a critical thinker, the first thing you ought to do is stop taking everything for granted, because everything is a question until you reach a different conclusion. First of all, boost both fluency and eloquency in EFL students. How this can be done? It's by healthy classroom discussions where students delve into a certain topic using their own words. For instance, a student can grasp a fancy transition, a fancy expression, and he translates it on his own and starts using it. So this kind of benevolent competition can boost both eloquency and fluency, especially that we are targeting English as a foreign language classes. Second is post-logical and original thinking to come up with proportionate solutions, nurture learners' curiosity to question premises, divergent views, and take a stand. Upgrade understanding and tolerance in today's globalized world, and fuel interest and passion about the subject under study, which is, of course, civilization. And sustainable development. Many of my colleagues have tackled sustainable development. The professors did in the conference. Here we have 17 noble issues to target in the UNESCO 23 agenda in all realms: education, justice, access to water, sea life, workforce, etc. But since we are tackling EFL classes, critical thinking in EFL classes, civilization and critical thinking, I thought that the fourth goal, which is quality education, is the suitable goal to accentuate in this part of my presentation, because EFL classes and sustainable development, education for sustainable development, has become a necessity in every educational agenda all around the world, because education is the vital instrument whereby educators have the opportunity to shape the mindsets of both future individuals and future global citizens, since we live in a globalized, interconnected world. Education is the strongest instrument whereby the aspiration of sustainable development can become a reality. English is a universal language, and it's a truism redundant. It's a lingua franca. Therefore, it is a suitable means to promote and instill SDGs on a global scale. It is the first spoken language all around the globe. In EFL classes, educators incorporate topics that target SDGs to cultivate students' global citizenship. And here we have the privilege, since we are in EFL classes, we can use education to target every and each one of these 17 goals in separate courses. Critical thinking and sustainable development. This is the simultaneous integration of critical thinking and sustainable development into the EFL curriculum will motivate students to reflect and evaluate the existing conditions. The rational instruction of critical thinking skills via the suitable methods and technique can prepare EFL students to be active global citizens, boost not only the cognitive skills but also the values, attitudes and actions in the real world, especially what is happening these days with our brothers and sisters in Gaza. I think every single one of us who is extremely touched by the atrocities committed by the Israeli government towards innocent people, and the double standard mainstream media that is trying to portray the colonized as the terrorist and the colonizer as the victim. So to be a good critical thinker is to distinguish between these two fallacies. The case of civilization course. In EFL classes, where the subject matter revolves around American and British civilization, educators tackle vital topics such as history, politics, and culture. And here I recall a quote from a very prominent American historian. I think his name is Michael Duma, and he said, "People who do not study history are doomed to repeat it," because this is what's happening. It's a dumb repetition of the regrettable relic of the past. The civilization course can be tremendously helpful if student-centeredness is adopted, which means the shift from the teacher-centered, where the teacher is the deposit, whereas the students are the depositories, to a new approach to student-centeredness, where the students is the main actor inside the classroom. It emphasizes the autonomous participation of students and also emphasizes the importance of metacognition. And with the 21st century requirements, civilization courses ought to adopt with the changing societal needs and expectation and teach students to think and react accordingly. Because once we manage to employ sustainable development in a rational way, we are going to detach the students from the theoretical meaning of it and expose them to real life challenges when they know exactly what sustainable development means. For instance, we can teach them recycling, that recycling plays a major role in preserving our environment for the coming generation. Renewable energy, what's happening is because of the CO2 in the atmosphere, and this exposition can tremendously shape the way individuals think about a sustainable world. And finally, exposure to certain historical, political, cultural contexts can be an opportunity for educators to raise awareness about SDGs and persuade the students to come up with innovative solutions. And I hasten to tackle the most effective methods and techniques to espouse critical thinking skills along with sensibility in civilization courses. First and foremost, the Socratic method that is based on the asking questions, classroom discussions, and let the students be spontaneous and express themselves and their ideas freely. Debating is also a crucial method. Kennedy 2005 actually proposed two different kinds of debating: four corners and think, pair, share, square, and also writing. When the student is required to write argumentative, comparative, or expository essays, first of all, writing is a very demanding. It's a very demanding activity when the students use a different set of skills to write a coherent and cohesion paragraph. Reading comprehension, when we bring texts that are related to sustainable development, to historical, cultural, socio-economic topics, to boost the students' understanding of the historical, of this kind of articles, journals, or books, etc. And problem solving, and incorporate acquired knowledge to provide solution to real-world problems, which is a vital activity here for infusing the tenets of sustainable development in EFL classes, the course of civilization. Sustainable development and civilization courses. In civilization courses, sustainability can be targeted in many ways, integrating SDG in civilization curricula, of course, by policymakers, educators, and curricula designers. Examine how Britain and America have dealt with vexing problems and problems related to sustainable development in the past, along with their short-term and long-term impact. As a conclusion, we locate at a serious era where the mindsets of individuals must be refined. Exposing critical thinking in EFL classes has proven to be not only vital to mindful students, but also fuel their intellectual arsenal as global citizens, and not only their academic background. The rational instruction of critical thinking, along with sustainable development goals in EFL civilization classes, will strengthen the students' ability to analyze, evaluate history, and resonate with current global issues. It further equips them with competency to foster sustainability in their daily civic life. That said, critical thinking, along with education for sustainable development, make the perfect formula and the magic elixir to shape a sustainable world aspired in the UN 2030 agenda. Thank you so much for your attention.